Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Innovation and Strategic Partnerships, the Registrar, Provost of the College of Medicine and the Postgraduate College, Dean, Faculty of Law, Deans of other faculties and of students, Directors of institutes and centers, Heads of departments, 12th Vice Chancellor of this university, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The 580th University of Ibadan Inaugural Lecture will be delivered by Professor Osifunke S. Ekundayo of the Department of Private and Property Law on behalf of the Faculty of Law. Professor Osifunke Sekina Ekundayo was born on November 13, 1955 at Shanu Hospital, Lagos, her father's hospital. Her parents are Dr. Folorunso Salau and Mrs. Esther Adebisi Salau ni Oshikolu, both of blessed memory. She attended Reagan Memorial Baptist Girls Primary School, Yaba, from 1961 to 1967, and her secondary school education was at Yejide Girls Grammar School, Ibadan, from 1968 to 1972. For her higher school certificate education, she attended Queen's School, Ibadan, from 1973 to 1974, and from 1975 to 1976. She was at the Federal School of Science in Lagos for her A-levels. Professor Ekundayo attended University of Ibadan from 1976 to 1979 for her first degree and graduated with a BSc honors in zoology. She was on the Lagos State Scholarship for her undergraduate NYSC program in Kaduna State in 1980. Professor Ekundayo returned to the University of Ibadan for a master's degree course in library studies from 1980 to 1981. She later worked as a librarian from 1981 to 1983 at the National Institute for Medical Research, Yaba, Lagos. She moved to Ibadan when she got married and served as the librarian of the Court of Appeal, Ibadan Division, from 1983 to 1993. Her exposure at the Court of Appeal, Ibadan, to an array of lawyers, jurists, and researchers who regularly comb through the library's vast collection of legal resources, inspired her dream to study law at the University of Ibadan from 1988 to 1991. After earning her LLB degree, she proceeded to the Nigerian Law School in Lagos, who was called to the Nigerian Bar in 1992, and subsequently enrolled as a solicitor and advocate of the Supreme Court of Nigeria between 1994 and 1995. She worked briefly as a counsel at the law firm of Chief and legal practitioners, and in 1996, she established her law firm, Funke Ekundayo, where she served as the principal partner. Between March and July 1998, Professor Ekundayo was appointed as a member of the Oyo State Law Review Drafting Committee by the Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Professor Ademola Yakubu, under the chairmanship of Honorable Justice J.A. Olowofoyeku, retired. The committee carried out a comprehensive review of the old laws of Oyo State, which culminated in the present laws of Oyo State. In 1997, Professor Ekundayo joined the University of Ibadan as Lecturer 2 in the Department of Private and Business Law in the Faculty of Law. Between September 2003 and March 2004, she was a recipient of the MacArthur Staff Development Grant, a research grant funded through the MacArthur Foundation Fellowship. On this grant, she conducted research at the following places: the Institute of Advanced Legal Studies in London and the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals in London. Her research, titled Introduction of Electronic Law Journals in the Library, discussed the introduction of electronic law journals in library services. During this period of her master's degree in Queen Mary University of London, she had the privilege of having Professor Geraldine Van Buren as her supervisor. Professor Van Buren was one of the drafters of the 1989 UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. The experience at QMUL developed her interest and passion for child's rights laws. She then did her PhD study at the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, under the sponsorship of Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TET Fund, University of Ibadan Staff Development Program. She was awarded the Doctor of Philosophy in Law of the University of London, effective 2015. Professor Ekundayo has held several administrative positions at the University of Ibadan, including the Assistant Hall Warden, Obafemi Awolowo Hall, 1999 to 2003, Sub-Dean, Postgraduate, Faculty of Law, 2005 to 2007, Member of the Faculty of Law Library Committee, 2016 till date, and the Acting Head of Department, Private and Property Law, 2021 to 2023. From 2013 till date, she has been an Associate Lecturer at the Institute of Child Health, College of Medicine, University of Ibadan, and a lecturer for the MacArthur Foundation-sponsored postgraduate master's degree program of the Department of Child Adolescent Psychiatry, College of Medicine, University of Ibadan from 2016 to 2018. Professor Ekundayo has also served the university as a member of some important committees, notable among our Member Exhibition Committee, University of Ibadan 60th Foundation Day Ceremony, Member of the Ad Hoc Committee for the design of a brand new logo for the Faculty of Law, April 2011, and a Foundation Clinician at the Women's Law Clinic, 2007. Professor Ekundayo is an external examiner and assessor of PhD candidates at universities in Nigeria and outside Nigeria. She has supervised over 40 master's degrees dissertations and 5 PhD students. With over 45 publications in reputable journals to her credit, Professor Ekundayo has presented papers at national and international conferences. She's an avid researcher in cross-national research projects. She prepares expert reports for the Ethnic Minority Law Center in Scotland, United Kingdom. In February 2019, she was selected as a subject matter expert to contribute to the report prepared by the Research Directorate, Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada on the situation of sexual and gender minorities in Nigeria. The report provided useful information about sexual and gender minorities in Nigeria. She provides consultancy services for a range of non-governmental organizations too. Professor Ekundayo was a volunteer at the juvenile home in Eleyele, Ibadan, where she visits and interacts with the children at the home. She is a member of many professional bodies, including the Nigerian Bar Association, the Nigerian Association of Law Teachers, and the International Federation of Women Lawyers. Professor Ekundayo is a devout Christian, a member of the Chapel of Resurrection, University of Ibadan, where she's a member of the Resurrection Lily Societies. She's also a member of the Anglican Church of Hope and Salvation, Jericho, Ibadan. She's married to Professor Segun Ekundayo, a retired professor of chemistry, and the marriage is blessed with children and grandchildren. I now invite Professor Osifunke Sekina Ekundayo to deliver her lecture titled, Speaking Out for the Numerous Voiceless Children Shut Out of School in Nigeria, an Endless Odyssey. Professor Ekundayo.
The title of my lecture is Speaking Out for the Numerous Voiceless Children Shut Out of School in Nigeria, an Endless Odyssey. The Vice Chancellor, Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration, Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic, Deputy Vice Chancellor Research, Innovation and Strategic Partnerships, Registrar, Bursar, University Librarian, Provost of the College of Medicine and of the Postgraduate College, Dean of the Faculty of Law, Deans of other faculties and of the students, Directors of institutes, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. To start with, I thank the Almighty God, through Jesus Christ, my Savior, for the opportunity to give the 580th inaugural lectures on behalf of Faculty of Law. I will always acknowledge the Lord's goodness in my life. I recall when Professor Iyabo Mabonku of the Department of Library, Archival, and Information Studies, LARIS, gave her inaugural lecture in 2017. And she mentioned that the lecture might as well also be her valedictory lecture because she will be retiring soon after. It is worthy to note that I share a similar situation. It's an immense opportunity for me to give this inaugural lecture before my retirement, which comes later this year. It is indeed a great honor for me to be nominated to deliver this inaugural lecture in the 2024-2025 series in the Faculty of Law, and I'm humbled by this opportunity. I also thank the management of the university for increasing the slots of inaugural lectures allocated to the faculties, without which the hope of even delivering an inaugural lecture for me would have been unattainable. I pay tribute to all professors who have delivered previous inaugural lectures from the Faculty of Law in this university. It's shown on the screen. I was motivated to undertake this research on the primary reason why numerous children in Nigeria are kept out of school, following my encounter with 2 young children in 2011. The first child is Lola, who was 10 when I met her. One morning, I noticed that Lola was at her mother's stall during school hours. I asked her mother the reason why her daughter was not in school that morning. She told me that Lola was asked to make a payment at school for some school materials and she could not afford it. So her daughter had been prevented from coming to school until the payment is made. I told her that the government mandates primary school education as it is compulsory, and she will be fined for preventing her child from being at school. Immediately, she replied and told me that since I'm a lawyer, referring to me, that I will go and defend her, that she was not able to send her child to school because it was unaffordable to her. This got me thinking that it is a fact that children from low-income background will not be able to receive education if it is not completely free of all direct and indirect charges. The second child was 6-year-old Peter. His father was a security guard in a residential building in Ikoyi, Lagos. All the family of 7 lived in the great house. One morning, I saw Peter returning from school, and he was still in school uniform. So I asked him why he was not in school that morning. He replied, "They pursued me from school." This meant he was violently chased away from school. The reason was because he could not pay for a compulsory school material. Both Lola and Peter were denied access to education. They are amongst the numerous children in Nigeria who have never been to school, or who started school but dropped out, or who are in school but at risk of dropping out. I realize that poverty denies these children their right to education and thereby derives them dignity and limits their potential. This encounter piqued my interest in researching the state of education in Nigeria. It is pertinent to read out the report given to the UK Parliament by a group of some UK MPs on their return from their visit to Nigeria. This was their observation. I'm quoting now. The 4 schools we visited near Abuja and in Lagos were certainly characterized by enthusiastic young people, but also by inadequate resources and old-style chalk and talk teaching delivered from the front of overcrowded classrooms rather than through engagement with young people. Despite that, the young people we met seemed captivated by the experience and willing to sit it out to progress and try to advance themselves. It could be deduced from this report that notwithstanding the various barriers children in Nigeria face in accessing education, most are undeterred. I find a great motivation in these children's resilience and in the ingenious optimism. Doubtless, there are obstacles, but they are not insurmountable. And the children in Nigeria are eager to receive basic education at any opportunity. This was what fueled my resolve to do a study on the rights of children in Nigeria to free and compulsory primary education. I want to quote Nelson Mandela. He said, "Education is the great engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that a son of a mine worker can become the head of the mine, and that a child of a farm worker can become the president of a great nation." I want to compare right and privilege, because we always feel that maybe this free education is a privilege. For a right is an obligation of the state. It is guaranteed and can be claimed. On the other hand, privilege is just doled out at the pleasure of the state. It is discretionary. Right is grounded on the rule of law, and there is equality for its enjoyment. But for privilege, no remedy for lack of performance. From human rights perspective, it has been acknowledged that the right to education is essential for people to be aware of other rights they are entitled to exercise them, and to be empowered to demand them. States are the principal duty bearers and are under obligation to fulfill, respect, and protect all human rights for all individuals within their jurisdiction. The right to education may be described as an empowerment right. It is an empowerment right as it empowers an individual to access other human rights. Empowerment rights make it possible for an individual to take charge of his life. It is also a multiplier right, as the degree of its effective implementation impacts the enjoyment of other human rights. So, education is no longer the privilege of an elite. It is reaching out to embrace the whole of society and the entire lifespan of the individual. I want to make some definitions so that we can understand some concepts on education. The definition of free primary education, in other words, what fees are free? This definition does not have a formal consensus, and the interpretation is not as straightforward as it might seem. Free primary education, however, can be seen as free from tuition fees, textbook fees, and so on. Hence, Even though free primary education is introduced, not all fees or costs that pupils and households bear are removed. The requirement that primary education be available free for all has been interpreted by the Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights as guaranteeing the availability of primary education without charge to the child, parent, or guardian. Compulsory education. Compulsion in free education, free primary education, requires that all those with responsibilities towards the child, the state, its agents, and parents or guardians are to ensure that the child accesses primary education, subject to the state meeting the necessary adequate requirements in relation to quality, relevance, and affordability. Primary education can be compulsory only when it is truly available free of charge on a non-discriminatory basis to all. Making primary education compulsory is contingent to making it free. Parents cannot be compelled to send their children to school if they cannot afford the cost of schooling. Out-of-school children. Out-of-school children refer to children who are excluded from school education, including children of school age who have never been to school or who have started school but dropped out, or who are in school but at risk of dropping out. When we talk about public institutions or public schools, these are schools maintained at public expense and offer general opportunities to all children. Government funds such schools and to provide free education to all students. Whereas for private institutions, these are owned by individuals or groups and they are profit-making oriented. From my preliminary research, it is sad to know that Nigeria has the largest number of out-of-school children in the world. It is estimated that 1 in every 5 out-of-school children around the globe is in Nigeria. In addition, only 61% of children between the ages 6 to 11 years attend primary school regularly. 10.2 million children of primary school age are out of school. This is according to UNICEF 2022 report. Realizing that in this 21st century, children in Nigeria still encounter formidable constraints in their efforts to enroll in and attend primary school, I recognize that there is an urgent need to analyze the constraints that keep large number of children out of school and advocate that primary education should be free from financial obstacles so that all children in Nigeria can go to school. Several factors are responsible for keeping children in Nigeria out of school. The most common among these is poverty, and this results in the inability of the parent to make both the direct and indirect educational costs for their children. There's also decline in quality of education, such as high teacher-pupil ratio, teachers lacking required training or qualification. Then the schools, they have dilapidated facilities. Also, local customs, culture, and religion and internal conflicts are also often used to prevent many children from receiving primary education. We also have this barrier of poor budgetary allocation for education. There's also the indebtedness of the state to the international financial institutions, such as the World Bank and IMF. And IMF demanding liberalization of trade as a debt relief strategy. Corruption and associated lack of transparency and accountability is also a barrier. Also, there is a legal barrier due to the Constitution. The Constitution expressly outs the jurisdiction of the courts from questioning whether any act or omission is in conformity with the fundamental objective and directive principle of state policy. This is Section 6, subsection 6C of the 1990 Constitution of Nigeria. All these have acted as barriers to the implementation of free primary education in Nigeria. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, education is one of the most protected rights in international law. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, establishes rights to education. Also, the International Covenant, Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, Convention on the Rights of the Child, and African Charter on Rights and Welfare of the Child contain similar provisions. Each of these documents specifies that education must be compulsory and available free to all children. The right to free and compulsory primary education is protected in many international instruments. The language of the various provisions in the instrument is remarkably uniform. The tone is obligatory. Based on such consideration, it has quite correctly been claimed that the denial of a free primary education to children is thus a clear violation of this customary right under the customary international law. International cooperation on education for developing nations play a vital role in promoting sustainable development, reducing poverty, and fostering peace and stability. It remains essential for the international development partners to meet up to their promises for educational development assistance and to make such aid effective and predictable. The Chancellor of Exchequer, who he later became the UK Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, in 2006, highlighted the need to assist in funding free primary education program in poor nations. He remarked as follows, I'm quoting him, "I want to particularly draw attention to the need for primary education. It must be universal, but it must be free. I was in Kenya more than a year ago, and I found that in the week that Kenya made education free for its children, 1 million children who had not had schooling turned up to be registered for school. Just one signal of the demand for education when it is available free of charge." So part of our commitment to funding is to make it possible for primary education to be both universal and free. And I hope that we can move this forward quickly in the next few months. End of quote. This was the Gordon Brown saying. So Nigeria, we have obligations under international law. International human rights treaties obligate state parties to recognize the rights in the treaties and to give effect to them by adopting all necessary legislative and other measures domestically. There are 3 dimensions to the domestic framework which determines the context of the implementation of the right to education. The first consists of constitutional and legal guarantees. The second is the institutional infrastructure aimed at translating the right into practice. And the third is the governmental administration delivery of service at both the federal and state levels. The state duty for human rights refer to a government legal and moral obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill the human rights of all individuals within its territory and jurisdiction. It involves 3 core responsibilities. 1, respect. The state must not violate human rights itself. 2, protect. The state must prevent third party from violating human rights. 3, fulfill. The state should take positive action to facilitate the enjoyment of human rights, such as providing public education. Under the human rights-based approach for education, there are certain essential features of education, namely availability, accessibility, acceptability, and adaptability, devised by the former UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Education, Katrina Tomaszewski. It is called the 4A scheme. It is meant to be a model strategy for action which will lead all children to be able to attain free primary education. So I want to analyze the 4A scheme briefly. The first A, availability. Schools must be established. Schools must not be closed. The right to establish private schools must be guaranteed, and state parties must not neglect the public education system. Also, teachers must be available, teachers must be properly qualified, and teachers must be given opportunity for further training. The second A, accessibility. Education must be accessible without discrimination. Education must be physically accessible. Education must be economically accessible. At the primary level, it must be free. The third A, acceptability. The state must set and enforce minimum standards in education concerning, for example, quality, safety, and health. The opportunity for instruction in the mother tongue must be maximized. The rights of parents to ensure their children's religion and moral education is in conformity with their own convictions must be respected. And the methods of instructions, the contents of textbooks, and teachers' conduct must respect human rights value. The fourth A, adaptability. Education must be flexible so that it can adapt to the needs of a constantly changing society. Is education a justiciable right in Nigeria? The 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, as amended, groups education. Education is grouped under Chapter 2 on fundamental objective and directive principle of state policy, wherein free, compulsory, universal primary education is listed as an objective state policy rather than a substantive right under the Constitution. And provisions under the fundamental objective and directive principle of state shall not be adjudicated on nor enforced in any court. That's section 6, subsection 6C of the Constitution. So, thus, free and compulsory primary education is not currently a constitutionally guaranteed right in Nigeria. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, promoting and ensuring the right to basic education for children in Nigeria will permanently be achievable if there is constitutional amendment guaranteeing the right to free, compulsory, and universal education as a substantive and justiciable right. The question now is, can the courts help? Even though primary education is under fundamental objective and directive principle of state policy, from which the court's jurisdiction is housed in the Constitution, there has been court activist approach, whereby the courts read the fundamental objective and directive principle of state policy in conjunction with fundamental rights. With increasing recognition of social and economic rights in the international arena and their incorporation in the national constitution, as their incorporation in the national constitution has even weakened the notion that this kind of rights that are incorporated among the directive principles are not fit for judicial enforcement. These developments have already shown their impact on the interpretation of non-justiciability of directive principle insofar as the courts are enforcing them through the route of fundamental rights. Previously, the courts had declined jurisdiction to cases on fundamental objective and directive principle of states in Nigeria, as was in the decision of Archbishop Okoje and the Attorney General of Lagos State, where it was held that the court has no jurisdiction to pronounce any decision as to whether any organ of government has acted or is acting in conformity with the fundamental objective and directive principles. The most recent but current cases like SERAP and Federal Government of Nigeria, which was before the ECOWAS court, held that it has jurisdiction to adjudicate on the case. And the most recent court judgment on the right to education is LEDAP case, LEDAP and Federal Ministry of Education. In this case, the Federal High Court, sitting in Abuja, held that the right to basic education can be litigated and is enforceable in courts in Nigeria. So I want to look at the national legal framework now on which protects the right to education. The first one is Nigeria Child Rights Act of 2003. Section 15 of this Child Rights Act provides for the right to free and compulsory primary education as follows. Every child has the right to free, compulsory, and universal basic education, and it shall be the duty of the government of Nigeria to provide such education. However, the right to free and compulsory primary education cannot be enforced or challenged in court because of the Constitution of Nigeria, which is the ground norm, which states that the government shall, when practicable, provide free, compulsory, universal primary education. That's section 18 of the Constitution. Also, we have the Universal Basic Education Act of 2004. The UBE Act is a law aimed at promoting rights of children to free and compulsory basic education in Nigeria. The Act provides that every government in Nigeria shall provide free, compulsory, and universal basic education for every child of primary and junior secondary school age. Under the Act, the goods and services to be provided free of charge in public schools are tuition, books, instructional materials, classroom furniture, and midday meals. Therefore, there is an abolition of all forms of fees and levies. But despite these provisions, in practice, levies and other forms of charges, such as money for textbooks and furniture, are still being paid in most public primary schools in Nigeria. I want to now look at the legislative history for education in Nigeria, from free primary education to, that is FPE, to universal primary education to universal basic education. The FPE, free primary education, this was initiated by the region. The Western region, they had 1955 free primary education program, the 1957 in Eastern region, and the Federal Territory of Lagos, they have the free primary education scheme in 1957. And they were all free. And this free primary education was implemented till early 1970s. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I'm a product of free primary education in the 60s, and I cannot recall seeing any pupil driven out of school for non-payment of fees, as school was free then. The regional initiatives gave way to a federally constituted universal primary education, that is the UPE scheme. Due to the huge oil revenue accruing to the country, the federal government, with effect from the 1976-77 school year, made financial grants to each state in the country to enable them to implement the free UPE scheme. The introduction of the National UPE program was aimed at improving access to school by providing free primary education for all children. But there were challenges. Initially, nationwide UPE was financed through an oil boom and accompanied by pledges that all education would be made free. By 1981, the nationwide UPE program had faced difficulties. By 1983, nationwide UPE was in shambles without the earnings from exporting oil to sustain it. Because of the worsening economic conditions, Structural Adjustment Program, SAP, was introduced in Nigeria in 1986 as prescribed by IMF and the World Bank to stimulate recovery of the ailing Nigerian economy as the condition for obtaining loan facilities. There was also the overdependence on petroleum as the main source of revenue, and this had far-reaching adverse effects during the recession of the 80s. Another factor that inhibited the success of the UPE program had been lack of continuity. There were a series of coups and counter-coups during this period under the military dictators. Also, the Western world and the military government, their relationship were not cordial, and this affected the level of assistance given. The collection of all these factors affected the sustenance of the national universal primary education. Then UBE came as replacement for Nigerians' universal primary education scheme. This was launched in 1999 and was aimed at providing free universal basic education to all, to enable citizens to acquire appropriate levels of literacy, numeracy, and life skills. Despite declaration that UBE is meant to be free and compulsory, many children are still not in school because of hidden costs. It was also revealed that corruption is making the implementation of UBE largely untenable. This was what brought about the SERAP case. So the question we ask ourselves now is, can we sustain free education? We say we want free education. Can we sustain it? There is the argument that if school fees are charged, it will be an effective way to improve or maintain quality in public schools. But there is a counter-argument that imposing fees would lead to further exclusion, as children from poor families who are unable to pay the fees will remain deprived of education. So there is need for government to prioritize its spending and allocate more funds in its budget into education. Another argument for financing free primary education through introduction of fees is that many developing country governments cannot afford to provide the necessary funding to deliver adequate education services through tax revenues alone. But it's a wrong assumption that funds raised through fees will be channeled directly back into either the school where they are collected or into education systems in general. This is not always the case. In the case of general taxes, revenues are in demand by many other competing sectors. We should note that fees charged in primary schools have always had little impact in improving the quality, especially in rural areas where not much can be collected from families. Many of the benefits of primary education are not only for the child who receives it, but also for the families and the nation indirectly, though it might not be evidenced immediately. One of the greatest investments a country can make in its economic future is investment in the education of its children, as this will eventually lead to production of indigenous skilled manpower in the country, as we had in Japan and China. It will be difficult to imagine a complete abolition of public education after it had been part of the global landscape for 2 centuries. We can imagine what the world will look like without free public education. In the gap left by inadequate public school provisions, private providers, especially the so-called low private schools, have mushroomed. There are doubts over the quality of these schools, as most are unapproved by the government, and given the low fees, they cannot afford to have qualified teachers. So there are doubts that they provide an objectively good quality education. It should be noted that these schools, which are claimed to be affordable to the poor, have not decreased the numbers of out-of-school children in Nigeria. So an increased budget to improve quality of public primary schools will improve the situation of public primary school in the country. What recommendation and conclusion? There is need for constitutional amendments incorporating substantial rights to free and compulsory education. Then there should be state willingness, better management and administration of education, and need for improved security. Conclusion: no child should be left behind. Therefore, ensuring access and completion of primary education for every child in Nigeria is imperative. Depriving children of education mortgages the future of the country. Appreciation. To start with, I thank God for all his blessings in my life and in my academic career. Without my close relationship with Christ, I'm certain that what I have attained in my academic quest would have been impossible for me. Thank you, Lord Jesus. To my parents, Dr. Folonsho Salau and Mrs. Esther Adebisi Salau, I say thank you. I thank my mother especially for believing in me. I remember she was always saying to me that I will become a professor in her lifetime. Though this did not happen, but I'm certain that she's cheering me today from heaven. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to my siblings, Toyin, Mariam, Funlayo, Taiwo, and Kendi, and my nieces and nephews. Thank you all for believing in me. To us, this is a testament of the strength of family bond, and I could not have achieved this without each of you by my side. I acknowledge my aunties and my uncles. I appreciate my husband's siblings. I want to especially appreciate my special aburo, Mr. Abiodun Olatunji SAN, and his spouse. Mr. Olatunji has been constant supporter and is ever ready to assist me at any time. I need to acknowledge Mr. Mike Ariola, who has been like a son to me. He has been of assistance and service to me since I joined the University of Ibadan. I cherish his loyalty. I acknowledge all my lecturers. I acknowledge all my spiritual mentors and their spouses, my vicar, and Professor Venerable Nyinkagbotosho and his wife, and members of the Anglican Church of Hope and Salvation. I would also express my gratitude to my sisters of the Resurrection Lily Chapel of the Resurrection. I cannot go without expressing my deepest gratitude to Oluwatisegun Eshu and Omolara, Olufumilola and Oluwaseun, my beloved children. Your encouragement, maturity, and support gave me the courage to keep moving forward, even when I felt overwhelmed. Thank you for being my inspiration, pride, and my greatest blessings. The achievements is not mine alone. It belongs to all of us. Lastly, I would like to express my deep appreciation to my husband, Shegun, whose unwavering support has played a significant role in my career journey. Through every challenge and breakthrough, he had been my mainstay, offering encouragement, understanding, and countless sacrifices that allowed me to pursue my goals wholeheartedly. His belief in my potential when I doubted myself has been a constant source of strength. Thank you for being my biggest cheerleader. I cannot have come this far without your love, patience, and partnership. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, ladies and gentlemen, I thank everyone for listening. God bless you all.